What's up, guys? Cameron here from Drums and Drams, and today I'm going to be revealing my number 4 whiskey of 2023. If you haven't already watched my number 5 whiskey of the year video, go back and check that out first. I'll drop a link card up here. I'll put it in the description of this video as well. That way you can watch these in order and kind of see the sequence of how I get from 5 to 1 throughout this process. And of course, if you want to go back and check out the massive live stream I did, it was over 4 hours long where I tasted through a lot of different whiskeys to kind of narrow things down to the bottles that you see here on the table. You can go check that out as well. I will also put that link in the description, but be forewarned that it was chaotic, it was unorganized, and it was kind of meant to be that way. It's meant to be a little less serious. I'll say this at the beginning as well in this video. Don't take my top 5 list to heart. Don't take it as some, end-all be-all in the whiskey community. I'm not a critic. I'm just a guy that likes drinking whiskey on YouTube. So take this for what you will. Please don't go spend a bunch of money on one of these bottles on my behalf. So that's the disclaimer at the beginning of this. I'll try to put this on all the videos, but now let's get into it here. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to review this whiskey quickly. I'll give you some notes on the nose and on the palate. You can be looking at the bottles on the table throughout this and kind of formulate your thoughts about which bottle you think it might be. Then I'll do the reveal. We'll talk about it. We'll wrap it up. And then tomorrow you can check out the number 3 whiskey of 2023 and so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's check this thing out on the nose and see what we get. Yeah, very classic bourbon sense on this. And I should be more specific and say classic, nutty, old bourbon. Classic, nutty, old bourbon aromas right away on the nose here. A few different kinds of pie come to mind, actually. I'm going to name off 3. Chocolate pie, peanut butter pie, and cherry pie. So, lots of good baking spices, chocolate, peanut butter, cherry. Very standard stuff here, but wrapped in an oak blanket. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's a beautifully oaked old bourbon. It smells great. It's one of those things. When you think of bourbon, whether you're a new whiskey drinker, maybe you don't drink whiskey at all, but you think about what bourbon must taste like, given the fact that it ages in barrels in Kentucky, yada, yada, yada. This is what you think of. This, to me, is what bourbon in my head, when I just think of the word, this is what comes to mind. This kind of a flavor profile. It smells delicious. It's a great combination of classic aromas and also very sweet. So usually when you get older whiskeys like this, older bourbons like this, I'm spoiling it, it is a bourbon. Usually you get maybe a little too much oak, but in this case, there is a lot of oak, but there's a lot of sweetness to balance it. A lot of those good baking spices as well. Let's get it now on the palate. Cheers. All right. So the distillery that this comes from is, in my opinion, known for what just hit me on the front of my palate when you get bourbon to a certain age, particularly 12 years and up. And that is this kind of sour punch on the front of the palate. It's like a sour oak. Sometimes I'll refer to it as a sour oak or a sour leather, but it's definitely a sour note relating to the age of the whiskey. That's when you start to notice it come into play. Again, 12 years and up. You can already start to maybe imagine where this is from, what bottle this is going to be on the table. But that sour punch right up front is carried through with those great spice notes, those great aromatic baking spices. And then you get to the mid palate and you're getting all that chocolate, peanut butter, and cherry pie. As it gets into the finish, it is a little bit of a shorter finish, and that's my one knock on this whiskey. It did still make number 4 this year, even with a shorter finish, because it is so delicious, so crushable, very, very balanced, and at a proof point that accentuates the balance, that allows it to shine without being overly spicy, overly hot, but also without being overly watery, which many whiskeys of a higher age coming from this distillery recently have been a little underproof and people complained. So let's go ahead and do the reveal now. Number 4 whiskey of the year. You probably have an idea of 1 or 2 bottles on the table. It is going to be this Hardin's Creek Claremont at 110 proof, 17 years of age, which is a great age statement for a bourbon. For a bourbon coming from a legacy distillery at about $160 to $180, What we're basically talking there in terms of price is $10 per year. When you're in premium bourbon age territory, which 17 years certainly is, to pay $10 per year is to be expected, probably at minimum. If you find anything less than that, you're getting a great deal. And so in this case, I love the price point. The availability actually is surprisingly good. If you're in Columbus, Ohio, where I live, this is sitting places right now, and not just a few bottles. Like, quite a bit of this stuff is still on the shelf. For those of you who know about these Hardin's Creek releases, you'll know that there were 3 different releases this year: the Claremont, the Frankfurt, and the Boston. And those releases correspond to where they were aged. Particular barrels were then, blended together from each aging location, and then you're essentially able to taste the whiskey version of terroir, basically the different rick houses that they come from. And it's a really cool way of having this kind of side-by-side tasting experience for consumers. They also came out with a 3-pack, 200 milliliter sampler set, which is so great, and we need to see more of that on the market. This Claremont was actually, I believe, the first release of the series. Everybody thought it was fantastic. I feel like universally widely respected release. The Frankfurt, for me, in every blind flight and unblind flight, always comes in last place. It's the spicier of the 3. And finally, the third release was the Boston release. I feel like it was the oakiest of the 3. I liked it for that because I love oaky whiskeys. And so for me, I always gravitated towards the Boston. But in a recent blind flight, with all 3 of those releases, plus the Jacob's Well Batch 1 and Batch 2 also in the Hardin's Creek lineup, I chose this Claremont, and I decided, you know what, for this end of the year, whiskey of the year kind of list, let's put the Claremont in the mix and not the Boston. And I think that was a good choice because this has more sweetness. It's got a little more balance with the oak. The oak is dialed back just a smidge, which allows the sweetness to shine. Again, the only knock on this is the finish, but I'm totally willing to look past that because when I pick this bottle up, just like I say with some of my criteria for these whiskeys, I cannot put it down. I start drinking this stuff and I start my night with it and I end my night with it because it's that good, super crushable, 110 proof. We would all love to see something like this at 120. I get it. We're looking for that hit that we used to get from all those 15-year Knob Creek store picks. But if this is the next best thing, or maybe even a better thing, I am totally cool with it. So Hardin's Creek Claremont, a delicious whiskey. Let me know in the comments if you've tried this. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy these videos. Stay tuned for 321 of 2023. And then afterwards, I'm going to drop some videos, favorite finished whiskey of the year, Rise, and I'm going to be recommending some honorable mention type videos, other stuff to, again, kind of spotlight some whiskeys from 2023 and also some affordable and available options. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for checking this out. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you next time here on Drums and Drams.